It was a moment that would change everything. One conversation, one bold offer, and nothing could prepare me for the way my life would spiral out of control. I remember the day clearly. It was a crisp afternoon in mid-July. The sun was beating down outside, but the inside of the upscale restaurant felt cold, too cold. The kind of cold that makes you realize something isn't quite right. I was sitting at a table, nervously glancing at my phone. I had been waiting for over an hour. The restaurant was quiet, almost too quiet. The sound of cutlery clinking, soft whispers of distant conversations, the occasional tapping of shoes on the wooden floors, everything seemed amplified in the silence. And then, he walked in. The doors opened, and the man who walked in could have been a character from a movie. Tall, confident, the CEO of one of the most successful companies in the world. He wasn't just anyone. He was someone I never thought I'd get a chance to meet, let alone sit across from. His tailored suit caught the light just right. He walked with the kind of stride that made everyone else in the room pause. His presence was commanding, like a lion entering a room full of sheep. I could feel the weight of his gaze as he approached. He was everything I imagined and more, but none of that mattered, because I wasn't here to admire him. I was here for something else. I took a deep breath, pushing aside my nerves. He sat down across from me, flashing me a smile that felt more like a challenge than a greeting. "So, what's this about?" he asked, his tone casual, almost dismissive, but there was something in his flicker of curiosity. He wanted to know why I called him here, why I requested this meeting in the first place. I swallowed, trying to find the words. I'd rehearsed this in my head 100 times. But now that he was here, it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. "Look, I know this is going to sound crazy," but I paused, struggling to keep my composure. "If I make your son talk, will you give me leftovers?" There was a long silence. I could see him processing my words, his eyebrows furrowed slightly, as if he wasn't sure if he had heard me correctly. "You're serious?" His voice was a little lower now, tinged with disbelief. I nodded. "I am." For a moment, he just stared at me. The silence between us thickened, each second feeling like an eternity. I could feel my heart beating faster, but I didn't back down. I had made my offer. His lips curled into a slight smirk. He leaned back in his chair, his fingers drumming softly on the table. The atmosphere felt charged, like the calm before a storm. "You think you can make him speak?" he asked, his voice both mocking and intrigued. "And why would I even agree to that?" I leaned forward, lowering my voice so only he could hear. "Because you're tired of seeing him silent. You know he's capable of more, but you're too scared to push him. I'm offering you a chance to get him to speak, to open up in a way you never could." There was a dangerous glint in his eyes now, a mix of skepticism and something else, curiosity, maybe even desperation. He studied me for a moment, weighing his options. And then, slowly, he nodded. "All right," he said, a strange intensity in his voice. "Let's see if you can deliver." He didn't know it then, but by agreeing to that challenge, everything in my life was about to change. This wasn't just a random conversation. It wasn't just a small request. This was a turning point. There was no turning back now. As I stood up to leave, I could feel his eyes on me, studying every movement. I couldn't help but wonder, was this really the right decision? But deep down, I knew one thing for sure. Whatever happened next, I was going to make sure it left a mark. A mark that neither he nor his son would ever forget. What does it mean to make an offer so bold that it forces the most powerful people to reconsider their own choices? What if that one decision could change your entire future, forever? The next few days felt like a blur. I had made a promise to the CEO, a dangerous one, and now I had to deliver. But as the days passed, the weight of what I had agreed to began to settle on my shoulders. Heavier than I could have ever imagined. I couldn't stop thinking about the look in his eyes, the CEO's eyes, when he agreed to the challenge. There was something unsettling about it. Was it mere curiosity, or was he testing me, seeing if I had the courage to follow through on my bold offer? The son. He was the key to everything. The one I had to reach. I had heard the stories. Quiet, distant, a boy who never spoke more than a few words at a time. It wasn't that he didn't have anything to say, was that he chose silence. He had the world at his fingertips, access to power and influence that most could only dream of. But he didn't want it. He didn't care. People said it was because of his upbringing, or the pressure of being the son of a powerful CEO. But I knew better. There was something deeper, something personal, that kept him from speaking, and I was going to find out what. Meeting was set for the next afternoon. I arrived early, pacing outside the private office where the CEO's son was waiting. My mind raced. I had no plan, just instincts, just the sheer determination that I could make him speak. But deep down, I was scared. Scared that I wouldn't be able to break through his silence. Scared that no matter what I did, I might fail. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. The office was cold and impersonal, filled with sleek furniture and polished floors. He was sitting in the corner, staring out the window. His face was unreadable, his body language rigid. He didn't turn. When I entered, I approached slowly, sitting down across from him. The silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. I could hear the hum of the air conditioning, the faint sound of traffic from outside, but there was nothing from him. Not a sound, not a word. "Hey," I said, my voice soft but firm. "I'm here because I'm offering you something." He didn't react. I leaned in slightly, trying to catch his attention. "You don't have to speak, but I think you should. You've got something inside. Something that wants to come out. Why don't you let it?" Still, nothing. It was like talking to a wall. What does it take to break someone's silence? What if the words they refuse to speak are the very ones that could set them free? I wasn't going to give up that easily. I had made a promise, and I wasn't walking out without fulfilling it. I took a deep breath and tried a different approach. I stood up and walked toward the window, standing just beside him. His gaze flickered toward me, but he didn't speak. "I know you're scared," I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. "Scared of what people expect from you. Scared of what you might say, but you don't have to be. You can let it out. You can say whatever you want." A long pause. Then, he did something unexpected. His lips parted slightly. I thought for a moment that maybe, just maybe, he was about to speak, but it wasn't words. That came out. It was a breath. A heavy, frustrated sigh. And for the first time, I saw something in his eyes. Pain, fear, vulnerability. I wasn't expecting it, but I understood. He wasn't just silent because he didn't want to talk. He was silent because he was holding something back, something deep inside. Something that scared him. That night, I met the CEO again. He was seated at his usual table in the restaurant. His drink in hand, his eyes were sharp, calculating, as if he had already anticipated everything that happened today. So, he asked, a hint of amusement in his voice. Did he speak? I hesitated, searching for the right words. He didn't speak. Not yet. The CEO's smile didn't falter, but there was a coldness in his eyes now. "You think you can reach him, don't you? You think you're the one who can break through his silence?" I nodded, though the truth was, I wasn't sure. I didn't know how long it would take, or if I could ever get him to open up, but I had made a promise, and I wasn't about to back down. Why does it matter? I asked, my voice suddenly sharp. Why do you want him to talk so badly? The CEO's gaze hardened. He leaned forward, locking eyes with me. "'Cause, my dear, silence isn't always a choice. Sometimes, it's a cage." The words hung in the air between us. A cage. The thought echoed in my mind long after I left the restaurant. What if I wasn't just trying to get him to speak? What if I was trying to free him from a cage he didn't even know he was trapped in? But then I remembered the weight of the promise I had made. The challenge, the deal. Was I really doing this for him, or was I doing this for me? Was I trying to prove something? And if I failed, what would that mean? Would I be just another person in a long line of failures in his life? What happens when the stakes are higher than you ever imagined? What happens when breaking someone's silence becomes more than just a challenge? It becomes a matter of freedom. The following days felt like a relentless tide pulling me deeper into uncertainty. I had ventured into the unknown, promising something no one had ever done before, breaking the silence of a young man who had chosen to withdraw from the world. But with each passing hour, the doubt started to creep in. Could I really do this? Could I make him speak? I sat in front of the large, polished desk again. The office was quiet, far too quiet. The boy, his son, sat across from me, a mere shadow of the person I hoped he would be. His face was a mask of cold indifference, like a fortress no one could breach. The chair creaked slightly as I shifted, trying to steady my nerves. The first time I had met him, he hadn't even acknowledged my presence. He had been silent, almost inhuman in his stillness. Today I felt the same tension between us. I had no idea whether he was aware of what I was trying to do, or whether he even cared. "Why won't you talk?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "What are you afraid of?" For a long while, he just stared at me. His eyes weren't angry or resentful, just distant, like he was somewhere else entirely. I had thought the silence was a defense mechanism, but now, I realized it was something deeper. The boy was trapped in his own mind, in a prison of his own making, and I was starting to wonder if I could unlock that cage. I kept trying. Every day, I showed up, but I was losing hope. The walls seemed too thick, and no matter how hard I tried, they wouldn't come down. Every word I said felt like it bounced off him, like it was going nowhere. But then, on the third day, something unexpected happened. As I sat there, staring at my hands, trying to gather my thoughts, I heard a soft voice. It was barely audible, but it was there. "I'm not like you." I froze. At first, I wasn't sure if I had imagined it, but then he repeated the words, more clearly this time. "I'm not like you." It was a simple statement, but for him, it was a breakthrough. For the first time in weeks, he had opened his mouth. I leaned forward, my heart pounding. "What do you mean? What do you think? You're not like..." He paused. The silence stretched again. Longer this time. His eyes, the ones that had been filled with nothing but indifference, now looked tired, worn, like he had carried something on his shoulders for far too long. something he couldn't talk about. I don't belong in their world, he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't fit in. I never did. They don't see me for who I really am. They just want me to be someone I'm not. I could feel the weight of his words pressing down on me. This wasn't just about breaking silence. It wasn't just about forcing him to speak. This was about understanding him. Understanding his silence. Who are you really? I asked, my voice softer now, almost as if I were speaking to a fragile bird on the edge of flight. What do you want? What do you need? He looked up at me, his eyes those cold, distant eyes finally softening just a little. I want ... I want to be free. I want to be me. I left the office feeling like I had just cracked a tiny part of him open. It wasn't much, but it was something. It was more than what I had gotten the first few days. But as I walked down the hall, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. His words, those quiet confessions echoed in my mind. They don't see me for who I really am. And that's when it hit me. What if the CEO, the man who I had been working for all along, was just as trapped as his son? What if the entire family had been hiding behind walls they had built to protect themselves from the outside world, but those walls were suffocating them instead? I hadn't realized it before, but the CEO wasn't just a powerful businessman. He was a man desperate to control his family, especially his son. And the more I learned, the more I saw that their world was one of control, of expectations, and of power. The silence of his son was a reflection of the family's own silence. The next day, I met the CEO once again. He was sitting at the head of the large glass-topped table in his office, a cup of coffee resting in front of him. His cold gaze locked onto mine as I entered. So, what happened? He asked, his voice as sharp as ever. Did he speak? Did you break him? I hesitated. How could I tell him the truth? How could I explain that I hadn't just broken his son's silence, but had uncovered a whole new side of this family? A side they had kept hidden from the world. So, what happened? He asked, his voice as sharp as ever. Did he speak? Did you break him? I hesitated. How could I tell him the truth? How could I explain that I hadn't just broken his son's silence, but had uncovered a whole new side of this family, a side they had kept hidden from the world? I took a deep breath. He spoke, I said quietly. But it's not what you think. Your son is different from what you see. And maybe, just maybe, you're both trapped in the same prison. The CEO's eyes darkened. He didn't say anything for a long time, but I could feel the tension rising in the room. The truth had been spoken, and now there was no going back. What happens when the walls you've built to protect yourself become the very thing that keeps you locked in? What if breaking one person's silence leads to the exposure of a much deeper truth? The days that followed felt like I was standing on the edge of a precipice, looking down into the unknown. The conversation with the CEO had shaken me more than I realized. I had thought that breaking the silence would be the hardest part, but now, I understood that the real battle had only just begun. His son had finally spoken. But those words weren't the victory I had imagined. They were a warning, a glimpse into the deeper cracks that had formed within this family. And now, I was in too deep to walk away. The CEO didn't take my words well. Of course, he didn't. The icy walls that had been up for years only grew higher the moment I mentioned the truth. I could see it in his eyes, that mixture of fear and anger. He had hoped I would fix the problem, not open up a can of worms. What do you mean, trapped? His voice was low, his jaw clenched. I didn't ask you to psychoanalyze my son. I asked you to make him speak. But I had seen it now. The truth couldn't be ignored. I stood my ground, feeling the weight of the moment. You're asking the wrong questions. It's not about whether he talks. It's about why he doesn't. And it's not just about him, it's about you too. There was a tense silence. The kind of silence that felt like an answer in itself. His mask, his carefully constructed mask of control began to slip. For the first time, I saw something vulnerable in his eyes. Something broken, a deep crack, hidden for years, was starting to show. He took a step back, running his hand through his hair in frustration. You have no idea what it's like, do you? He muttered, as if to himself. To have everything, to be expected to be everything, to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders, while everyone around you just demands more. For the first time, I felt something for him, a glimpse of empathy. Maybe I had been too quick to judge him. Maybe, like his son, he had been living in his own cage of expectations, of power, of fear. I took a deep breath and stepped closer. Maybe you're right, I said softly. But your son isn't just a reflection of you. He's his own person, and he's trying to tell you something that you don't want to hear. The CEO stiffened. What's that supposed to mean? His voice was sharper now, defensive. It means, I said slowly, my heart pounding in my chest, that your son is asking for freedom. He's asking for the right to be himself, without your expectations suffocating him. And maybe, just maybe, you're scared of that. You're scared of what will happen if he breaks free. There was a pause. The words hung in the air, and for a split second, I thought he might finally understand. But then, something shifted in his expression. His eyes narrowed, the walls going back up. Asterisk, you don't get to lecture me, he said, his tone cold again. You're here to do a job, not to play therapist, so either help him or get out. That night, as I lay awake in my hotel room, I kept thinking about what I had said. Had I gone too far? Was I crossing a line I couldn't come back from? I didn't know the answer. But I knew one thing for sure, I couldn't back down now. The next morning, I returned to the CEO's office. His son was there, waiting for me, his face unreadable, but something was different this time. There was a crack in his silence, something deeper than before, a flicker of emotion behind his cold mask. Asterisk, I need to ask you something, I said, sitting across from him. What do you want? What do you really want? He met my gaze. There was a weight in his eyes, a vulnerability I hadn't seen before. I want out, he whispered. I want out of this life. Out of all of it, the pressure, the expectations. I can't breathe in this world. And then, for the first time since I had met him, he did something I never expected. Asterisk, he stood up, walked over to the window, and stared out. His voice broke as he spoke again. I'm not just a son. I'm not just an heir. I'm a person. I want to be someone else. Someone who's free. As I left the office that day, I felt a strange weight lifting from my chest. It wasn't a victory, it wasn't even closure. But something had shifted. The walls were starting to crumble, not just for him, but for all of us. Asterisk, and then I remembered. Something the CEO had promised me, leftovers if I made his son speak. The offer had seemed trivial at the time. But now, I realized that the leftovers weren't about food or favors. They were about freedom. Asterisk, but would the CEO let go? Would he ever truly let his son be free? Or would the expectations and control continue to suffocate him? The answer wasn't clear, but what I knew for sure was this. The struggle wasn't over yet. The real battle had just begun. What happens when breaking free from one prison just leads to another? What happens when the chains you've been fighting to escape become the very thing that defines you?